Hello, I'm Robert Muchamore. Welcome to the CHERUB district.
Alors bonjour Robert, merci d'avoir accepté cette interview pour CHERUBcampus.fr et The CHERUB. Alors d'abord, comment allez-vous? Comment s'est passée la journée d'hier?
Yeah, I had a fun day yesterday. I did a really good book signing, lots of people there. Only trouble was the train broke down, so it took about 3.5 hours to travel home, and I didn't get my dinner until midnight.
Alors deuxième question, alors on a reçu beaucoup de demandes de fans pour savoir si vous alliez venir à Montpellier, en Charente-Maritime ou en Bretagne.
I don't know, you'd have to ask my French publisher. I'm a good boy, they tell me where to go and they tell me where there's going to be lots of fans to sign books, and I just go along and go where they send me.
Alors Elia vous demande si lorsque vous avez commencé à écrire la série, vous saviez comment les personnages allaient évoluer, quelles allaient être leurs missions, leurs relations, ou au contraire tout cela est venu au fil des tomes.
It's a lot different. When I first started writing CHERUB, it was really just about being an unpublished author, writing one book and trying to get my first book published. So I didn't really plan it, I just wrote the story and saw what happened. And I think because of that, there's a few things in CHERUB that I wish I'd changed or I wish I'd done differently, because they've made my life difficult over writing 17 books now. When I've done my newer series, like Henderson's Boys and Rock Wars, I've had the benefit of experience, and all of those series I've planned out much more carefully, and I've known how many books there are going to be and what's going to happen to the characters before I start. But that just didn't happen with CHERUB.
Est-ce qu'après avoir publié un livre, vous regrettez certains de vos choix dans vos livres et est-ce que des choses vous paraissent moins logiques sur le coup?
Yeah, two things I can think of that I sort of regret with CHERUB. The first one is that Kerry is almost 2 years younger than James, and that makes it quite difficult for their relationship, because publishers don't like the idea of people having underage sex or the fact that someone's too young in a relationship. So if I did things again, I'd probably make Kerry the same age as James, not younger than James, because that's made my life very difficult. The second thing is when people ask me about the credibility and could CHERUB be a real organisation, the thing that always occurs to me now is that maybe the campus is too big, and in a country like Britain, you wouldn't be able to hide something that big. So maybe if I started writing it again, I would either set CHERUB campus in a different country like America where there's a lot more room, or I would make CHERUB campus quite a bit smaller, so it was like just maybe the size of one school or something like that, rather than being this big sprawling campus.
Où toute cette inspiration pour écrire autant d'intrigues différentes mais passionnantes vous est venue, se demande Baptiste.
There's a very famous writer called writer, she was a singer more than anything else, called Malvina Reynolds, and she gave a great quote, which was that if I knew where inspiration came from, I would go there every day. And it's just one of those things, you just have to work at it. I'm just always on the lookout for new stories. I'm going to start writing the next CHERUB book early in 2015. It will be a book that comes out in 2016. And right now I am working on, what is this book going to be about? And I've got to look at newspapers, look at things that happen in the real world, watch the news, watch documentaries, and hopefully somewhere amongst all of that input I'm going to find some inspiration for the next CHERUB story.
Votre éditeur n'a-t-il jamais hésité avant de publier des livres pour ados parlant de trafic de drogue, de guerre de gang, de violence conjugale ou encore de sectes?
Yeah, at first I think it was very difficult with my publisher, because we kind of had to establish boundaries and work out what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable. And I think now, after writing so many books, I think we've kind of got the level where we want the books to be realistic and believable, but we haven't got so much violence that we upset lots of librarians and parents and things like that. So I think we've kind of reached the level that everyone is happy with now.
Un professeur de français nous a envoyé une excellente question où il vous demande pourquoi y a-t-il tant de marques dans vos livres?
Brands.
Yeah, like Starbucks.
Brands in books are quite difficult because, first of all, you don't want to use brands that are too temporary, like a brand that's fashionable maybe for just a few months. That can be very difficult. So you need to use big brands, and maybe like Sony or Microsoft, or things that are around for a long time, because otherwise by the time the book comes out, you don't know what they are. And in terms of why I use brands, it's just because they're so prevalent in everyday life and so important to kids. You know, I think pretty much every one of my fans will know that, you know, most people would say, you know, it's cooler to wear Nike trainers than non-Nike trainers. Or if you're of a certain political persuasion, you know, it's not cool to wear Nike trainers. Brands are an incredibly important part of our lives, and the idea that we should just keep them out of literature and deny that they're a part of the real world, I think is just silly. I definitely think you need to represent brands in books because they exist in the real world.
Paul B vous demande si vous pourriez intégrer des personnages réels dans vos livres CHERUB.
I've done it a little bit. There was a character called, I've forgotten his surname now, but he was called Jake, and he was a kid in Britain who had cancer, and he was a very big CHERUB fan. So I made a character out of him, named a character after him. I've never really based people on characters, but I have actually had a couple of instances where we've named people after characters.
Allez-vous faire venir des agents en France lors d'une prochaine mission?
The difficult thing with sending CHERUB agents to certain countries is just what languages they speak. So, for example, the James Adams character doesn't speak French, and that makes it very difficult to actually send James to France on a credible mission. So it's actually really quite difficult. You really need agents who speak the characters, and it is a limitation on what you can do.
Est-ce qu'un prochain tome de CHERUB pourrait se centrer principalement sur le campus, comme par exemple une attaque terroriste ou un ennemi travaillant pour CHERUB?
I think the difficulty with basing a CHERUB mission on campus is that once the secret of CHERUB campus has come out, it's very difficult to put the secret back in the bottle again. So I've always been a bit reluctant to do it, because although it would be really cool to sort of have terrorists running through corridors on campus shooting at people and stuff like that, once you've done that, it's actually very hard to make CHERUB a secret again unless you have some very contrived way of doing it. So I've always been really reluctant to do that.
Voilà maintenant la question que tous les fans français se posent. CHERUB 16 sera-t-il le dernier de la série? Sinon, jusqu'à combien de missions comptez-vous prolonger la série CHERUB?
So basically, I've slowed CHERUB down. I've not stopped writing it. I'm going to start writing the CHERUB book at the beginning of 2015. And that is the last CHERUB book I'm contracted to write. So there'll definitely be one more. Whether I do more after that, I think it depends on a lot of things. It depends on whether I can come up with a good idea for another CHERUB book, because that gets harder the more books that you've written. I guess it also depends on how successful other things like my Rock War series is. Because at the moment I'm really into Rock War, which I think will be out in France in 2015, and I get quite excited about that series, more so than CHERUB, just because I've been writing it for such a long time.
Le premier tome de CHERUB, Sans joueur en enfer, a été adapté en BD. Et donc les fans se demandent si vous pourriez éventuellement adapter les tomes suivants de la même manière.
We'd really like to adapt the other books in the series. The problem is the artist who drew the book, John Aggs, he's decided not to do any more adaptations. He just wants to work on his own projects. So we tried to find another artist, and so far we haven't really been very successful. And there's also been some disagreements between the different publishers over what format and how the book should look. So I think everyone wants to carry the graphic novel series on, but we haven't got an artist, and we haven't got agreement between the publishers in what format they want those books to take. So it looks at the moment like nothing very much is happening. It might come back to life again, but at the moment it doesn't look like there are going to be any more graphic novels. There's certainly no fixed plans.
Y aura-t-il des romans similaires en Anderson Boys dont l'histoire se situerait pendant la guerre froide? Car vu le grand réalisme et l'excellence des différents tomes d'Anderson Boys pendant la Seconde Guerre mondiale, Louis B aimerait retrouver des agents mineurs sur d'autres conflits plus récents.
You know, I've kind of said that I'm not going to write another historical series, and the reason is I didn't realise until I started writing Henderson's Boys how much harder it is to actually write historical stories. Because, like, you know, if I'm writing a book that's set in the present day and I walk into a building, it's just like I know what the building's like, I know what type of floor it's going to have, whether the electric's going to be there. As soon as you do a book set in France, it all becomes as soon as you do a book set in the past, it all becomes a lot more difficult, it all becomes slower, every process, everything has to be thought through much more carefully. So I don't think I'm going to write more historical stories because it's just so much extra work and I'm really quite lazy.
Quand peut-on espérer une publication française de Rock War?
My French publisher haven't actually told me officially, but as far as I know, it will be out sometime in 2015.
Comme tout le monde le sait, CHERUB c'est une série pour adolescents. Et donc on se demandait si ce serait envisageable de la faire évoluer vers une série pour jeunes adultes, voire pour adultes.
I don't really think so. I think it is what it is. It's about kids of a certain age. It appeals to kids of a certain age. I do get adults who read the books, quite often parents who start off reading them because their kids read them and stuff like that. But I think if I wrote for a different age range, I think I would write something completely different rather than an adaptation of CHERUB.
Donc justement, allez-vous écrire prochainement un livre pour adultes?
Yeah, I've just finished writing a novel for adults, and I really don't know if it's ever going to be published because it's something that I wrote really as an experiment to see whether it was something I could do, and I've just sent it to a couple of people to get feedback, and I'm just really waiting for the first feedback on whether anyone likes it, whether people think it's any good or not. And I just don't know. It's certainly something that I'd like to do at some point, but whether it will be this novel, whether it will be a different novel, whether it will be in 1 year or 2 years, or whether it won't be for a long time, I don't know. But I definitely think I'm going to publish an adult novel someday. It's just a question of what it will be and when it will be published.
Ewan Colfer, l'auteur d'Artemis Fowl, a récemment déclaré lors d'une interview qu'il aimerait bien collaborer avec vous. Donc la question est la suivante, est-ce que vous aimeriez travailler avec cet auteur ou même avec un autre auteur?
I've never been hugely keen to collaborate with another author because one of the things about writing is that being an author it's just that quite nice thing of just being in your own head and existing in your own world. So I'm not sure I really want to coordinate with another author, and maybe on a small project or something like that. I wouldn't definitely say no, but I mean I would have no problem maybe for a small charity project or something like that. But I don't think I'd want to write a whole novel with another author.
Pour terminer cette interview, on aimerait enchaîner sur une petite touche fun. On sait que Rockwar parle de boys bands et que vous êtes inspiré du boys band One Direction pour créer la série. Donc la question est simple, est-ce que pour faire plaisir à vos nombreuses fangirls françaises, vous pourriez nous chanter une petite chanson des One Direction?
No. I don't sing.
Donc merci beaucoup Robert pour cette interview, merci d'avoir répondu à nos questions. On aimerait également remercier l'éditeur Casterman de nous avoir permis de réaliser cette interview.
Thank you. You asked some really good questions. It's been fun.